Hey, what's happening, everybody? Pleased to be joined tonight by former Pistons reporter, Detroit native, now in New York, anchor out at WABC, Ryan Field, joining us to talk. Yes, sir. You got to get that in there. Talk about episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Dance. And it's great to have you here because anybody that saw it, highly Detroit motivated, I guess, Detroit centric in this night of basketball, focusing on Dennis Rodman in the first episode. And then let's jump right into it, though. The end is what everybody from Detroit's going to be talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were looking forward to this when they gave us the previews last Sunday of what was going to be going on this weekend. And I was counting down all week, knowing full well how the story was going to be tilted. This wasn't like the Bad Boys documentary when you knew it was going to be, telling the bad boys side of things.
Right.
It's the Jordan Last Dance documentary. So I'll give credit where credit's due. And of course they're going to make MJ look, as good as possible. But the thing that stands out to me, they eliminated the Pistons in 1990. So that's actually, it'll be 30 years ago next month, right? 30 years ago next month. And 30 years later, Michael Jordan is still pissed. Horace Grant is still pissed. Scottie Pippen is still pissed. And these guys still can't get over the fact that the Pistons beat them 3 out of 4 times and that the Pistons walked off the court without giving them their proper love because they had waited 4 years for that moment.
Yep.
And they are still all up in their feelings about it. And the Pistons still own what's the word? Property, I should say.
A little real estate.
Yeah, real estate, thank you. In the heads of Jordan and the Bulls. And as a Pistons fan, and you're a guy that grew up in Detroit rooting for that team, there you go. And ironically enough, John Sally has his Bad Boys shirt on SVP on ESPN right now, and he was just doing this, talking about the Bad Boys. So that was great.
And he was on the 96 Bulls, too, so there you go.
Which is still weird. And Rodman was on there. I think Buddha have a run with the
Buddha
Bulls
was there, too.
Yeah,
very strange.
Which is very weird how that whole thing played out. But overall, I thought the documentary was very good. I thought it gave the Pistons a lot of love. I love seeing the Bulls' hatred for the Pistons and how much, it took for them to overcome them. Michael Jordan deciding to lift weights, 6 years into his NBA career finally. Just great storytelling, and it was great to relive such a golden era of the NBA.
No doubt. And we'll get into the rest of that. I do just want to talk about the end right now, though. They talked about the Bad Boys and not being able to beat them for a while. And I'm like, oh, this wasn't too bad. Wow, I thought they were really going to nail these guys. They talked about some dirty play and whatnot. Well, then we get to the last 15 minutes and we get to the walk-off. And then that was just complete mixed emotions for me as well because, we've heard Isiah talk about the Celtics. Hey, man, they walked off in 88 except for McHale, and I got to shake his hand, blah, blah, all of that. But we've never really seen the video of them walking off while there was still time on the clock. And when Isiah goes, no, I was like, wow, I've never seen him this defiant before. Holy crap, people are going to change their minds. And I'm like, yeah, Zeke, the Pistons are going to get some love. Then they go to Jordan, and immediately everything changed. Isiah could have said anything 15 seconds previous. The whole world forgot about it. And then you've got the Jordan quotes. There's nothing you can tell me that he said that's not BS and won't make me think that he's an a-hole. And Jordan wins again, just right there. And you said
it goes to the point. Yeah, it goes back to the point we were just making. This is Jordan's documentary. This isn't the Bad Boys documentary.
Right.
So, of course, he's going to have the last word. But to your point, I was shocked that they actually let Isiah tell his part of the story, and they showed the Celtics video of them walking off the floor.
Yes.
Kevin McHale, the only one that shook hands with Isiah, but Isiah pointed out only because he stopped him.
Yes, and I've never heard him say that before. Yes. I like that.
So he told his part of the story and then was like, look, back in those days, that's how it was done. In today's day and age of participation trophies in the world that we live in, nobody can understand that, right? But that's the way it was back then, and the NBA was a different beast. And the same way Jordan was calling out Horace Grant for complaining that he was hurt and got a tough foul against him and crying on the bench, that didn't fly back then. And you didn't like it, then so be it. But what they also left out, Rye, was some of the quotes in the paper leading up to Game 4, at the
Yes.
Palace, how Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan talked about how the Pistons were bad for basketball and basically just demeaned their entire 4-year run that they had in the NBA
Yep.
and didn't give them any credit. But
Yep.
the documentary conveniently left that part out.
Right. And
so
that
yeah,
part is in the Bad Boys doc.
that part is in the Bad Boys doc.
And that's why Laimbeer did what he did, rallied the troops and said, no, we're
out of here. Right. But they did show tonight, too, on SportsCenter, which they did not show in the documentary, that Sally and Dumars did say congratulations to the Bulls.
Yes.
They were shaking their hands on their way out. So a couple of the Pistons, much like McHale did for the Celtics, did stop and wish them congratulations. So, but again, it's just more of a great narrative because the bad boys are the bad boys to say that they walked out on Jordan and the Bulls being the a-holes that they are. It just fits the narrative even all these years later when, you know, people really know the truth now that more and more has come out about it, but whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of it is based on just the way it looked. First of all, Jordan was the golden boy. Isiah was never the golden boy, and he had issues as well, going back with Larry Bird, saying, if you know, the Rodman quote, which again got attributed to Zeke, just like the walk-off got attributed to Zeke, and it was Laimbeer's idea, the Larry Bird would be just an average player if he wasn't white. That happened a couple of years ago, so Isiah was not on that level. No one was on Jordan's level, but Jordan was the golden boy. And how dare you, we're going to crown this guy finally. And also the way it looked. The Celtics kind of were off on the side when they walked off. The Pistons, you know the way the Palace is set up better than anybody. To get back to their locker room, they have to walk on the Bulls bench. So they had to go right in front of them. So it made it look even worse than what the Celtics one did when they were just kind of walking off the court over in the corner. So I think that's a huge part of it as well.
I agree. And especially the one clip of Isiah, like somebody like reaches over his head and he has to like duck. And it looks like he's kind of like trying to like sheepishly leave the court.
Yeah, like put a coat over his head like you can't see him.
The optics are what they are, dude. And people can spin it any which way, and we've kind of talked about how people have already spun it. But, you know, the Celtics started this. The Pistons continued it. The Bulls didn't like it. 30 years later, they're still pissed about it. You don't hear the Pistons whining about the Celtics walking off the court. They could give two rips. But the Bulls are still bent out of shape about it.
And so, they won 6. And that propelled them even.
Yeah. It just goes to show you how the bad boys not only built Jordan and the Bulls, but how much they're still a part of their fabric all these years later that they still can't get over it. And, you know, frankly, as a Pistons guy growing up that way, I think it's fantastic.
I've never spoken to you about this before, and I can't believe it. I told a story last week about I was Pistons to death, and I heard Jalen Rose tell a story earlier this week. It got to the point with us where we made fun of people that had Jordan shoes. You know, meanwhile, the entire world is doing, you know, buying these shoes. People are getting killed for their shoes. We're laughing at kids who had Jordan shoes. Well, then something switched with me, and it was the Shrug game. I remember watching that, and Magic Johnson was doing commentary that year, and he would even say, hey, guys, set your VCRs. This isn't going to happen forever. You're watching the greatest player of all time and all this. And I'm like, you know what? He's right. And then all of a sudden I turned and I started respecting the heck out of Jordan and appreciating Jordan, where before, man, you couldn't tell me that he was the greatest player on earth and he sucked and we won back-to-back titles and screw him and all that, you know, as a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid. It flipped for me. And then the rest of his Bulls career, I was a Jordan fan because I'm like, oh my gosh, watch this guy. Did that ever happen with you? Were you ever in that boat? No, never did.
No. I mean, I've always respected Michael Jordan as a player, and I think he's the greatest player of all time. But I've never been a fan of Michael Jordan. I've never owned a pair of Michael Jordan shoes. I've never bought any of his apparel. I've never been a huge fan of that guy because Michael Jordan has always been about one thing, and that's Michael Jordan. And that's what's never sat well with me. And even in that documentary, what did he say when Phil Jackson got hired? Well, I didn't want Phil coming in because he took the ball out of my hands.
Yep.
Again, it all goes back to MJ wants it all to be about MJ. And the Pistons, you know, just using this as a life metaphor, the Pistons were all about the team, right? It was always about what's best for the team, makes everybody better. We're a unit. And that's kind of how they operated it. And that's how I always look at life. Like, it's never just about me. It's about the people you surround yourself with, who you work with, your coworkers, everybody making each other better. But with Jordan, it's him, his way or the highway. I don't want Bill Cartwright shooting the ball with 5 seconds left in the shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just you saw little snippets of the real Jordan coming out in that documentary. And as much as I respect the hell out of the guy,
right,
I never liked him for that reason. And I also didn't like him because Isiah got kept off the 1992 Olympic team when he had every right to be there. And this is a controversial opinion, but I felt like Chuck Daly should not have coached the team unless Isiah Thomas was on the team.
Yeah, well, and we've heard that Chuck just kind of sat back and kept his mouth shut and didn't go to bat.
And that to me doesn't sit well as a Pistons guy. And, you know, I respect the hell out of Chuck Daly, but
oh yeah,
you got to stick up for your own at that point. You know what
right.
I mean?
Right.
And
absolutely.
the fact that he just sat back and let that happen, you know, I thought Chuck should have taken a stance. And if it meant him not coaching the team, then so be it. I mean,
right.
How do you coach that team that has Magic and Bird several years older than Isiah on the team and not Isiah? And you got John Stockton on there. And,
yeah.
You know, I mean, come on, dude. I mean,
and
John
Stockton's a great player.
He's a good player, but he's not Isiah. You know what I mean?
No, he's not. Well, and we've seen video now since the Dream Team doc has come out and all of their practices in Barcelona, in Morocco, and every place that they were. Dude, Birds can't even practice. He's just laying down
right.
on the floor. His back is so jacked, and he barely even played in those games. He started, played a couple of minutes, he's out of there.
Right. It was a courtesy, dude, as a thank you for his imprint on the game and the legacy that he left. That's what it was. And if you're going to do that, then Isiah damn well should have been on the team as well. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. And that maybe that's a podcast for a different day. But it's and that's just another reason that Jordan never sat well with me. And I'm definitely in the minority in that, never being a fan of his. But I have no problem admitting that to this day.
Well, you know Zeke better than I do, and I've gotten to talk to him quite a few times. I know you talked to him just last week doing one of these. Did you guys talk about this, Doc, at all? And have you talked to him at all? And I know he knows that history just is the way it is now. And when you add up now the Knicks and things that happened there, his reputation now is what it is. Well, how does he feel about that, or how do you think he feels about it? And what we just talked about, his place in history has slipped because people just don't like that guy for one reason or another.
Right. And a lot of that is brought upon himself for what happened, you know, in his post-playing career. And unfortunately, people look at something like this because he did it to the Messiah himself, Michael Jordan, and walked off the court without saying anything. So I think Isiah, and really, you know, to a larger degree, the Pistons as a whole, they've kind of been painted in a negative light because of where they happen to fall in the NBA pantheon, so to speak.
Yep.
You know, it was Bird, Magic, then Pistons, then Jordan. And it's almost like if the NBA could go back and do it over, they would just wipe out those 3 years that the Pistons were good, right, and just let the torch go seamlessly from Magic to Bird to MJ and then on with the show. But I also think after the Bad Boys documentary, which was 4 years ago, that the Pistons started to get the credit or more credit that they had coming to them. And I think in turn, so did Isiah. And I think he's comfortable with his place in the game right now. He knows that he's one of the all-time greats, one of the greatest point guards to ever play the game. And as much as Michael Jordan still might not like him, I think all Isiah had to do was see Jordan's reaction tonight to smile a little bit and saying, I still have, to your point, real estate inside Jordan's head. Yeah. And I think that's all he needs to know, knowing what I know about Isiah, talking to Isiah, that he's cool and comfortable with his legacy. Should the Pistons have won another title? Probably. Phantom foul, Isaiah's, blown up ankle in 88. They probably should have won that year as well. Maybe we're talking about the Pistons differently had they won a three-peat as opposed to winning two. But either way, let it be known, as Isiah would say, that he's one of the all-time greats and he's cool with his place in history.
Well, let's get back into the doc a little bit, man. Obviously, the Bad Boy stuff is what we were all looking at. And then Rodman as well. Very heavily focused on him. What did really stood out, I guess? Were there a couple of things that stood out to you tonight about Rodman? Not a lot that we don't already know, but seeing some of that video was just incredible. Some of the behind-the-scenes stuff,
I
like
mean, it was
killing
great
a
to
beer
see,
and jumping on a bike right
yeah,
away.
it was great to see Carmen Electra. I was trying to think the last time I saw her. She looks like she hasn't aged a bit since she was on MTV.
No, she looked all right. I think you switched your words around. You said, great to see Carmen Electra. Carmen Electra looked great, I think was the order of that sentence. Yeah.
Either way. Yeah, I mean, obviously the thing about him going on vacation, which made its way on social media this week, was great. You know, and MJ saying, look, Phil, we let this guy go on vacation. We're never going to see him again.
Right.
If anybody needs a vacation, I need a vacation.
Yep.
So I thought that was great. And obviously the video of him getting on the motorcycle. And we saw a lot of this in the Rodman. Wasn't it? I think it was a 30 for 30 they had on Dennis Rodman.
Yep.
We saw a lot of that and heard a lot of these stories before. But, yeah, the part about the vacation was great. And I thought the other part that was cool was when Rodman came up to Jordan's room after that one game when he knew he messed up. And both Rodman and Jordan said, that's how he knew that I was sorry, that I had done something wrong. Even though I didn't say I was sorry, I came up and asked if he had an extra cigar. And MJ knew. And then without even hearing that, MJ said the exact same thing. So I thought that was pretty cool and just talked about their relationship. And you know, and for a while there, Rodman was Robin to MJ's Batman while Pippen was out, which is crazy to think. A guy who just rebounded and played defense was basically the second most important player on that team. So during their second three-peat. So, you know, there was a couple of interesting nuggets. And overall, it's just been a fascinating documentary, very well put together. The music, the video, everything has just been perfect. I mean, they've had so many years to put this together.
Right.
So they've definitely taken advantage of that. And it's just been a very enjoyable watch, even though if there's one team I can't stand, it's the Bulls still to this day and Michael Jordan. But I can still appreciate it as an NBA fan and a sports fan for how great it's been put together.
Well, and obviously not as many people are going to see this as saw the doc tonight. And they did a fairly decent job talking about Rodman, but I thought, man, they could have even gone further. I mean, they showed him with Madonna for about 10 seconds, and then they just randomly show Carmen Electra. Kids have no idea who she is, and I don't know if did they say they were dating or married for 25 minutes and annulled, whatever.
Yeah, I think they mentioned it briefly, but it's like one of those things where you almost had to see the Bad Boys documentary and you had to see the Rodman documentary before you saw this one. Right. You know, it's like trying to pick up a movie on part 3 when you missed the first 2. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think they're just under the assumption that most people have already seen that or know about that, and they didn't want to waste any more time on getting into all that other stuff. Yeah. Because and that's why Rodman had a documentary all to his own, because there was so much to talk about. So you know, it's one of those things where I thought they did a good job of, you know, telling what a quirky and you know, zany guy he was. But you know, for these guys like David Aldridge to come out and say, look, he was the best one-on-one defender I've ever seen in 30 plus years of covering basketball. I mean, you have to hear those type of things for fans these days that can't appreciate how good he was for a guy a la a Ben Wallace, who all he did was, you know, play defense, block shots, and get rebounds. But Rodman was even better at that than Ben Wallace was. If you think how good Ben Wallace was, it's crazy to think that Rodman was even a step up from Ben. Yeah. And that's really one thing that I think a lot of people today that, you know, don't know much about Dennis Rodman or that era of basketball will really take away from all of this going, wow, the Worm was more than just a sideshow.
No doubt. Well, and a lot of people, I tell people this that weren't around during the time, and it may have been 15 minutes, like literally 15 minutes of fame, but there was a tiny, tiny, tiny moment in time where on a pop culture level, Dennis Rodman was 1B to Jordan's 1A. I mean,
no question. He might even been bigger. I think more people in the pop culture world, just because of who he was dating and, you know, dressing up as a woman with all the crazy hairstyles and everything. I mean, I think more people in the pop culture world knew of Dennis Rodman than Michael Jordan.
I'm glad you said.
Is to say.
I usually say more. I didn't want to sound nuts. Okay. I'm glad you agree. I tell people that and they look at me like I'm insane. Yeah.
When you're talking about that audience, I mean, even somebody who's living in Bangladesh, sees these pictures of this guy in green hair dressed in a wedding dress and is like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, everybody in the world knows who Dennis Rodman is.
And he's on Entertainment Tonight every night. He's dating freaking Madonna, who's the biggest pop star on earth during that time. I mean, all the other women he's dating, Toni Braxton, Carmen Electra, just go down the list. And my gosh, he's on every talk show every night. He was in movies. Right. I mean, he was at least equal with MJ.
And hanging out with Kim Jong-un before the president. I mean, you got a whole nother level of it too.
My gosh.
I mean, the guy was one of a kind, to say the least.
What do you think so far just about everything? I know we got 6 more episodes to go. We haven't seen a ton of the behind-the-scenes video from the 97-98 season yet. We've seen some, but something that really stood out to me today was walking into Scottie's hotel room with cameras rolling as he opens the door. And there he is just chilling on the bed, talking about, I guess I'm going to play. I don't want to be traded. Well, like that just – that's unbelievable, man. I just cannot believe that I'm seeing this. I know you worked at the network and your partners, Fox Sports Detroit partners with the Pistons, Tigers, Wings, or whatever. You get access unlike guys like me get. But have you ever done that? I mean, and if so, that's pretty rare, especially in the middle of a controversy.
Well, no question. And the thing that they got lucky with was that they got Jordan to agree to this documentary to film the entire 97-98 season. They got lucky that the team signed off on it and basically gave these people carte blanche to do whatever the hell they wanted. And then third, they got lucky because, to your point, there was so many drama-filled storylines that unfolded during this season, and they had a front row seat to all of it. I mean, you couldn't have, to borrow a documentary term, you couldn't have scripted it any better. And they had all of this stuff just fall in their lap. And they're probably sitting there going, oh, my gosh. And the thing that I'm still, trying to wrap my head around is this video had been sitting in a vault for almost 20 years across the river here in New York, in Secaucus, New Jersey, at the NBA Entertainment Studios, untouched.
Right.
And they were sitting on this amazing, what they said was over 500 hours of footage. And they had to wait until not only they wanted to do it, but Jordan wanted to do it. They came to this agreement that they both had to agree that the video would be made and released at the same time. It had to be a mutual decision. And they wanted to do it for so many years, and Jordan kept saying, no, 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 no. Did you read the story about how this whole thing? Okay.
Yeah.
And then it was during LeBron's championship parade. They had a meeting set up with Jordan. He said, finally, let's do it.
Yep.
So, it's just incredible now. It's been 22 years, and this video has come to light, come to the surface, and we're witnessing one of the, greatest teams of all time, capping off 6 years and 8, winning a championship. Probably would have been 8 for 8 had Jordan stayed.
Who knows with this drama? maybe this drama with Jerry Krause, they would have, done something to him earlier.
Maybe. But maybe they win 2 in the middle and they don't win the last 2. So maybe they still win 6 when it's all said and done. But it's just remarkable to see. And I know you, when I first met you, we were, you were an NBA guy and I'm an NBA guy. So I know you can appreciate this as much as I can. And especially this was such a big part of our, not childhood, but adolescence, in your middle school years, going into high school, and then into college. This was such a big part of us growing up that to see it all come back to the surface, and now having Twitter to interact with people about, and so many comments tonight. Oh, I didn't know this happened. I didn't know this happened. And, people are learning about stuff that we knew a long time ago that maybe we forgot about.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, all this stuff is kind of coming back to the surface. It's just been very fascinating to see. Yeah.
And like you nailed it. This 22 years in between, and I'll never forget any of this stuff, man. I was NBA everything back then. And then I went to college this year, 1998. I went to college and all my roommates were from Chicago. So, they were bold, and I still to this day hear about how terrible the bad boys were and all that kind of stuff. So,
dude, but Bulls fans are not over that. They
No.
can't. I mean, I've been getting hit on Twitter tonight
Yeah.
by dudes that I don't even know in Chicago coming at me about stuff. They're still not over it. They just can't accept the fact that they lost 3 out of 4 times.
No.
So I think it's great.
Forget 8 in a row. If they would have beaten the Pistons a couple of times, which they would have if the Pistons not been killing Michael Jordan, they would have won 11 in a row. You know,
Maybe.
Yeah, according to them.
That's what they're going to say, but we all know the real truth about that.
I got one more thing, you know, man, talking about the Twitter world and everything, how we're jumping back not only pre-Twitter, but 22 years back. Let's jump a few more years back. And they kind of talked about the Rodman Palace incident in 93, right before they traded him, when he was found in the parking lot, I guess, with a shotgun. You know, apparently was going to commit suicide in this parking lot. I remember that being a big deal, but like, even for back then, I don't know that it was a big enough deal. They traded him and, you know, all of that. But I can't imagine something like that happening today. And then no big deal. Hey, we just move on. The guy colors his hair and the whole world is forgotten now.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine something like that happening
well,
today.
And I guess it's hard to go back to 1993 because I'd imagine, you know, and I was 16 at the time, a sophomore in high school, and I remember seeing it on the news, but I guess it's kind of hard to grasp the magnitude of that because news coverage is different nowadays, but I'm guessing it was a bigger deal than we think it was in terms of it was all over the papers. It was all over the news. People were talking about it.
Right.
We probably just don't remember it the way we think we do because it was so long ago. But to your point, if it happened today, oh my goodness. I mean, it would be with Twitter and social media the way that it is, with all the blogs and everybody with phone cameras and everything else. I mean, it just would have been completely blown way out of proportion. But, you know, as Dennis said, he fell asleep that night. And it's thankful that he did because who knows what might have happened.
Well, you know? Even news coverage, man, I can't imagine them letting this guy play. Like, I can just – they make him go away. They send him somewhere for, like, the rest of the year. I just can't imagine this dude playing after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, but the world, even in the last 10 years, has changed so much, let alone when you're talking 27 years ago, how we view things. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable.
So, it's definitely an interesting point. But yeah, man, thankfully the worm didn't do anything crazy for once, and he's still with us. So
no doubt, man. Hey, I got one more thing about the doc that stood out, and it comes back to the bad boys. How about the migraine game?
Well, Jordan, the look on Jordan's face tells you all you need to know. I think it was like the tongue out, like biting it. Yeah, it was that like, gosh damn Scottie Pippen.
Yeah. That's what his face said. Yeah.
Yeah. He still played. Scottie Pippen still played. You know, was it nerves? Probably. Could that have had some sort of effect on his, you know, he didn't sleep great, woke up feeling like crap because it was such a big game on the road. They're finally going to eliminate their nemesis. I mean, you talk about enormous pressure. You know what I mean? To that point, that was the biggest game of Scottie Pippen's career.
No doubt.
Game 7 at the Palace against your arch rival who's already beaten you 2 years in a row. Now you're on the road. So don't tell me for a second that nerves or whatever else did not play into it. You don't just wake up and have a migraine when he's never had migraine symptoms before. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he had, you know, perennial migraine headaches. He wasn't getting that all the time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it was one of those things where, you know, I definitely think nerves played a factor, and the look on Jordan's face said it all. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, he tried to cover it up a little later with a soundbite there, but yeah, the initial reaction was
and
absolutely.
That's why, and they stuck on his face for a while.
They did.
Cut away. They had that look on Jordan's face for a while, just to let everybody know what he thought about that.
Yeah.
Because Jordan, but don't forget, you know, the Pistons were up by, I think I saw a tweet, they were up by like 27 in the fourth quarter.
Right.
So whether Pippen had a migraine or not, it wasn't like they lost. It wasn't like they lost at the buzzer. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's just funny to think and look back at that. But yeah, man, it's been a fun documentary. We still got 6 more parts to go. I can't wait.
What are you looking forward to the most? Have you heard anything as far as going forward? What are you looking forward to the most so far? I know tonight had to be number one, but beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say tonight was definitely number one. I mean, just kind of see how they play it out the rest of the way. Like I said, we got 6 more episodes, and I kind of want to see how, they put a bow on this Jordan run that ended in 98. And as to your point, they haven't really showed a ton of the 97, 98 footage yet. They've been kind of setting it up. So I think the last probably 4 episodes are just going to be crazy behind-the-scenes footage, and it's going to be fun to watch it all unfold.
Well, I saw you tweet tonight something about missing the Palace, which we all do, man. I still can't believe they're not playing at the Palace. Talk about that a little bit. And then, man, dude, you've been gone from Detroit now, what, almost 7 years?
Yeah, man, it'll be 7 years in July. So, yeah. The Palace is a place, obviously, that I called home for work for the better part of really for 12 years. So it was a special place, and it just had that feel where it just felt like home. And LCA is great, and I've been to several games at LCA, and it's one of the nicest arenas in the league. And I think until the Pistons start winning there, it's still going to feel a little off, what I mean? Because what made the Palace so good was the Pistons moved there, and they had just come off a trip to the NBA Finals the year before, you know what I mean? So they were already at the top of the NBA. I think if the Pistons had moved to LCA in a similar fashion, I think they would be right where they, people would feel the same way about LCA that they did about the Palace when they first moved in there. But yeah, dude, I miss it. It was arena that even when it was the last year, it was still voted, I think, one of the top 10 arenas in the country because of all the updates they made to it. And it was ahead of its time in 1989 when it was built, or 88. And it was ahead of its time still in 2017 when they closed the doors. And I think that's all you really need to say about the Palace. But yeah, man, I mean, I've been in LA since then, in New York in the 7 years since. But, my Detroit teams, Michigan State, I'm always tweeting about them. It's like, you can have roots and wings. So I've flown away, but I still remember where I'm from. And that's never going to change. And I'm always going to support Detroit teams, especially on a night like tonight when the bad boys were getting railed by all the Jordan lovers. That was not going to go off without me having to say something about that.
Yeah, you definitely did, man. And the thing with the Palace, too, the Pistons never really had a home before that. They played at Cobo, but then, they played some games at the Joe, and then they're at the Silverdome. This was their home. And they had never won anything until they got their home. So, that just makes it so tough. You're right, man. I've been to a ton of games at LCA, and it doesn't matter how many I go to. It just isn't the same, man. It doesn't feel the same.
Yeah,
anything like
man,
that.
You got to have some sweat equity in that place. You
Yep.
got to lose. You can't get blown out in one playoff series and have sweat equity.
Yep.
They got to go on a deep playoff run. But I got news for you. Even in that Bucks series last year, that place still got pretty damn loud, dude, for a team that, frankly, didn't have a shot against Milwaukee, was still sounding pretty damn good. You know what I mean? So it definitely has the potential to be there. And Wings fans will say the same because the Wings haven't been good since they moved to LCA.
Yep.
They're going to miss the Joe because of all the memories there. So until we start getting some memories made in the new arena, it's always going to have a hollow feeling to it.
No doubt, man. And just Detroit in general, man, I know you get back quite a bit, actually. But, man, what do you miss the most about – and now being in L.A. and being in New York is two completely different things. And they're both completely different than Detroit. What do you miss the most about
Well, you talk about the three most opposite places you could ever live, right? Detroit, L.A., and New York. They all have things that I love. They all have things that I don't love. But the thing I miss about Detroit, obviously, is my family, my friends. I miss going to games. I miss covering my favorite teams. Back then it didn't even, not that it really feels like work today per se, but, when I was working in Detroit and covering the Wings and Pistons Tigers for FSD, it definitely didn't feel like work because I'd be watching the games anyway because I'm a fan, you know what I mean? And the fact that you're having the access to all these guys, it was definitely one of the greatest times of my life, dude, and I'm never going to forget it. And I can always look back on those moments and smile and think how great of a run that was.
No doubt, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you taking a couple of minutes, man. This has been a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun the next couple of weeks. But, man, this tonight was pretty darn good.
Yes, it was, man. I'm glad you had me on to talk about it. Let's do it again soon.
I appreciate you, buddy. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you again next week.